The Gettysburg Museum of History, located right here in the center of Gettysburg, PA. Owner and curator Eric Dorr grew up here and has spent his life collecting and preserving history through artifacts ranging from the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, World War II, presidential items, pop culture, and more. His museum is free and open to visitors Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m., where you can stop by and immerse yourself in some of the most amazing artifacts that you would never believe exist in the middle of Gettysburg. If you're a fan of Band of Brothers and Everything Easy Company, you'll love his exhibit featuring the Dick Winters collection and artifacts from D-Day. You can even own your own piece of history by buying one of the many relics they have for sale in the museum and on the website gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com. The Gettysburg Museum of History is a non-profit 501c3 organization with a foundation that allows all purchases and donations to keep the museum operating and open free of charge. They have been featured on the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Science Channel. Now you can check them out on American Artifact, the series on the YouTube channel, The History Underground. So that's the Gettysburg Museum of History at 219 Baltimore Street or the gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide. And today we are talking about Major General John Newton. John Newton. With us is somebody new to the show, but not new to licensed guiding. His name is Paul Bailey. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, man. Good to be here. Hello to everybody out there in podcast land.
And Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started here into the subject of John Newton.
Well, let's see. I've been a guide since 2010, and I guess I owe it all to three great teachers in my life. My fourth grade teacher made us study the Greeks and the Romans and had us read the mythologies. Great stories about the gods, how they fought each other. Every once in a while, they come down and hang out with the mortals and fall in love and have sex. And I was like, man, as a kid, hey, this history stuff is pretty cool.
Right.
So when I went on to high school, I went on to Archbishop Malloy High School in Queens, New York, which is where I grew up.
Very Catholic sounding.
It is. Very Catholic. At that time, it was all boys. Today, it is co-ed.
Right.
And my sophomore European history teacher would tell us all about the kings and queens and the battles and the treaties. And every once in a while, he would throw in stories, quirky stories about the individuals, like about the sex life of Catherine the Great, Tsarina of Russia. And I'll tell you, if you want to get a room full of teenagers to pay attention, talk about fighting and sex. Can you see there's a trend here? Well, in senior year, my AP European history teacher was actually British. And he was in London during World War II, survived the bombings. His father was an RAF pilot. And so when he talked about modern European events, he would talk about his experience, and he would inject emotion into it. And I was just like, this is history. This is what I want to do. And so I went on to St. John's University to get a history degree, but I ran into a lot of dry history, memorizing names, dates, and places. And I just realized that I didn't like that, and I realized that I wasn't a very disciplined student either. So I decided that after the sudden death of my father, and my brother and sister were both married and out of the house, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a burden on my mother, and so I enlisted in the Army. My first duty assignment was overseas. I worked with some great officers and sergeants, and they challenged me to be all I could be every day, and so I made rank pretty quickly.
That was the sales motto when you joined. Be all you can be. Okay, I remember those days. I was a little kid, but I remember them.
That's it. It's kind of back again. What's old is new. And so I had an opportunity to go back to St. John's, go to ROTC, finish my history degree, and become an officer in the Army. And halfway through my career, I was assigned here to Central Pennsylvania. I took command of the U.S. Army Recruiting Company based out in New Cumberland Army Depot. And that is where I met Gary Vezza. Now, if you know Gary, today he is a licensed battlefield guide.
Okay.
But back then, Gary was... He had just passed the written exam, and he was studying for his orals. And I said, Gary, I love history. Why don't we work together? We'll reach out to some of the junior and senior ROTC programs, some of the history teachers in the area. We'll invite them to come to the battlefield. You give them a free tour. You practice your orals. I get to talk to the students about joining the Army.
Okay.
And so it was a win-win for everybody. And we had such a large turnout, we needed 2 vans. And as you know, the guide kind of talks and drives at the same time. So I had to kind of pick up Gary's tour. And so I was like, hey, this guiding thing is pretty cool. Maybe something I could do as a retirement job. And so started studying to become a guide. Shortly after leaving recruiting, 9/11 happened, and so I was either deploying or getting ready to deploy, and I always took my Gettysburg books with me to continue studying. I used a website called Military History Online. I had a great chat group with guides and guide candidates and people studying for the exam and subject matter experts. And in 2006, I got to my last duty station in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And so I decided, it's only 270 miles to Gettysburg. I can make that drive and be a guide. And so I put my check in the mail to take the test. But I was still in uniform at the time. And right after sending off my check, I received orders to deploy once again. So I missed the 2006 exam.
Of course.
But I kept into the chat group and kept reading. And in 2008, I took the exam with 135 people, and they took the top 19 scores. I was in a 3-way tie for number 6. And out of the 19 of us, 10 of us got our badge. And so I retired in 2009. In 2010, I started being a licensed guide. But I had 2 kids getting ready to go into college, and so guiding wasn't going to pay for that. And so I accepted a position in the Department of Defense, who I still work for today. And so I was making that 270 miles drive for the last 14 years. But recently I accepted a transfer.
Good.
And so I'm still working for the Department of Defense, but now I just moved into town, and so I'm going to have more time for doing tours, and all this research on Newton is probably going to turn into a book.
Good.
And we'll see how today goes, and maybe we'll have plenty of time for me to come back and do podcasts.
I can tell already we will. All right, so Paul, well, first of all, what is it you're doing now? What's the transfer that you got?
So there's a couple of Department of Defense sites nearby.
Yeah.
Like
top secret. You'd have to kill me if you tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that,
gotcha.
But I'd kill you in a very special way. By boring you
I'm
to
honored.
death.
Thank you. Yeah. That's belly water torture. We call that.
That's right.
So, and you're an officer in the Army.
I'm a retired lieutenant colonel.
Retired lieutenant colonel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and you had what training yesterday that you went and did? You said your horse from.
Oh yes. So I work with Dr. Carol Reardon, and she has a staff ride program with the ROTC units.
Okay,
every
gotcha.
year the soon to get commissioned officers have to do a battle analysis, and so. Yesterday, I was with Ohio University, go Bobcats, out there in the rain for a good 6 hours. And so, I support the staff ride programs as well as the Foundation's leadership program.
That was a wet day yesterday, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
I don't need to tell
raining,
you that. You ain't training.
That's right.
That's right.
There you go. You know the motto.
That's what we say on our Get Out of the Car tours. When people go, what do we do if it rains? You get wet.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so Major General John Newton, Gettysburg's forgotten First Corps commander, as some might call him, as you wrote down here. He's from Virginia, though.
He is.
Tell us about his pre-war life, his early life.
He is. So, I was down living in Hampton Roads, and I was like, oh, holy mackerel, Newton's from right around here. So let me do some digging on Newton. And so see if you see a couple parallels here with other Civil War figures.
Go ahead.
Newton is from a very old Virginia family.
Lee.
There you go. He's quick. He's quick.
Okay.
Form of a question, please. No, you're good.
Is that... I thought it was just like as they come, rattle them off,
Well, keep that in mind.
Okay.
See if you see other things. So the Newtons come to the Norfolk area of Virginia in the mid-1600s, become very prosperous. And so when the city of Norfolk is going to receive its charter from the King of England, saying it's officially a city, it can have a mayor, it can have a city council, there's a name on the charter, except that guy dies before the charter arrives from England. And so the city council elect George Newton to be the first sitting mayor of Norfolk.
Wow.
His son, Thomas, also becomes mayor of Norfolk. His son, Thomas, revolts against the crown and actually supports the colonies.
Nice.
He becomes a colonel in the American Revolution, provides logistic support to Washington's forces executing the siege of Yorktown, not too far away from Hampton Roads.
Right.
And Thomas Jr.'s son, Thomas III, goes on to represent the city of Norfolk and the federal government. He's a congressman, and so he will get his son, John Newton, an appointment to West Point. Now, John Newton's born in 1823. He will enter West Point in 1838, and he graduates second in his class of 1842. Now, who's first in that class?
Oh, 42, I don't know.
Yeah, Henry Eustis. Henry Eustis. Now, Eustis's brigade is here at Gettysburg. It's the monuments around the Sedgwick Equestrian Monument up there. Also in that class is Abner Doubleday. And so Newton and Doubleday have a very long relationship way before they get here to Gettysburg.
Right, okay.
Also in the class is George Sykes, Richard Anderson, Lafayette McLaws, and down near the bottom of his class, James Longstreet.
So it's a all-star class of 42.
Yeah, I think the 43 class is kind of the Civil War class that the stars fall on, but 42 is very, very close.
Right.
John Pope is in the 42 class as well, so there's a lot in there. And so while half of Newton's classmates are serving in the war with Mexico, the general-in-chief, the chief engineer of the U.S. Army, Joseph Totten, is not worried about the war with Mexico. He's worried about having a third war with England. And so he sends engineers like Newton to build fortifications around the U.S. And so Newton is sent to build fortifications along the northern frontier with British North America, before Canada is Canada, along the Atlantic coast and down in the Gulf Coast. In the 1850s, there were a number of severe hurricanes that hit the Gulf and southern states. And so Newton is sent to Savannah to build lighthouses. And he's also sent to Pensacola. And the lighthouse he builds in Pensacola is still there today. Now, who else is building lighthouses before the Civil War?
Meade. Lee. Both.
Meade.
Okay.
Yes, Meade.
Yeah.
Okay, and so Meade is building lighthouses, and so everyone in the engineers before the Civil War has to account for all the funds that they're spending and all their projects. So they send those reports to the chief engineer. Chief engineer puts it in a book, submits it to the president. President submits it to the Congress. So if you're a professional engineer like Meade and Newton and Lee, you're reading these professional journals about what everybody else is working on. And so, yes, I'm suggesting that there is a relationship. Maybe not personal, but a professional relationship between Meade and Newton.
Certainly they would have heard of each other.
They would have heard
if not worked together.
Yes,
gotcha.
Exactly. Okay, while Newton is down in Pensacola, he's going to improve the fortifications along Fort Pickens. Now, remember, at the beginning of the Civil War, Lincoln is worried about resupplying and reinforcing two forts, Fort Sumter and Fort Pickens. Now, Sumter is going to be taken by the Confederates, but Pickens is never captured by the Confederates. And maybe Newton had something to do with that. And represent the city of Norfolk in the 1860 election as a constitutional unionist, except that when the firing on Fort Sumter takes place, Virginia secedes, Cincinnatus will now be part of the Confederate government as a Confederate representing the city of Norfolk.
Okay.
Newton's other brother, Washington Irving Newton.
Oh, wow. These names.
A great name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Washington Irving Newton is a U.S. Army officer, a member of the Dragoons, a veteran of the war with Mexico. And he pretty much says if Civil War breaks out, he's going to stay loyal to the Union. So you can see this family is going to be divided. Unfortunately for Washington, he's going to take ill at the beginning of the war. Luckily, and so he's really not going to see any service, too much service during the war. Luckily for him, his wife is going to nurse him back to health. Her name was Cornelia Armistead.
Thought you were going to say Hancock. I was like, whoa, this is really good. Okay.
Well, that would make sense. Right?
Yeah, it would.
Nursing him back
all
to
these
health.
names and right, nursing. But go ahead. Cornelia Armistead, though, that's interesting.
She is the sister of
Lewis.
There you go, Louis Armistead.
I almost said George.
You almost said Lee again. And so whenever you're out on the battlefield at Pickett's Charge, I'm wondering if Armistead is looking for his friend Hancock.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, keep in mind, he's also looking for his brother-in-law's brother, John, across the field.
Wow.
And so
his brother-in-law's brother. Yeah.
So technically
right,
his in-law.
Yeah.
I don't know what the official title is.
See, I just, somebody said to me the other day, how could you, because they were like, how long have you been doing this podcast? I said, 6 years. And like, is there enough stuff to talk about over 6 years with one battle? And I was like, yeah, there is. And it's like, this is a great example of that. I never heard that before. I've heard of other people who are somehow related across the field on Pickett's Charge. Never heard that one before.
Yeah, when Wayne Motz gives his great presentation on Armistead, he throws that in.
Never heard Wayne's presentation, so that's why,
You got to hear Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wayne's great. So at the beginning of the Civil War, when the war breaks out, Newton is going to be assigned to be the chief engineer for General Robert Patterson's 90-day Army of the Shenandoah. And Newton's going to be at one of the first battles of the Civil War, the Battle of Falling Waters, in July of 1861. And General Patterson's 90-day army defeats a Confederate force commanded by some guy by the name of Colonel Thomas J. Jackson.
I've heard of him.
Okay. Jackson will retreat down the Shenandoah Valley. Up the Shenandoah Valley. And Patterson sends Newton off to do a reconnaissance of Harper's Ferry. Since the Confederates evacuated Harper's Ferry, Newton's one of the first Union officers to be back there. And so Patterson makes the critical decision. He's going to secure Harper's Ferry instead of chasing Jackson. Well, this allows Jackson to get on a train and go to a place called Manassas, where Jackson becomes Stonewall. For losing track of Jackson, kind of a long history between, not long, but there's a history between Newton and the First Corps. It's not the First Corps that we know here at Gettysburg, but he is part of the First Corps. Now, McDowell's corps is supposed to bring up the rear when McClellan shifts down to Fortress Monroe to begin the Peninsula Campaign. And Lincoln's concerned that McClellan's taken everybody out of Washington, and so they stop McDowell from deploying to Hampton Roads. McClellan kind of gets upset about this, pleads with Lincoln, at least send me William Franklin's division, because Franklin's division has been working with the engineers doing training on this thing called amphibious operations. Okay, think about today's Marines fighting from the sea. Well, that's what McClellan wants to have Franklin's division do. And so Franklin's division is going to be released with Newton's brigade. They get down to Fortress Monroe, and McClellan's plan is to continue to lay siege to the Confederates along the Warwick River. Say that 3 times fast. And his plan is to send William Franklin's division up the York River to where it intersects with the Mattapony and the Pamunkey River, and there's a place there called Eltham's Landing. And so he wants to have Franklin's division come land in the rear of the Confederates and cut off their escape to Richmond, pretty much encircling the Confederates. It's a good idea. But with every military plan, the enemy gets a vote, and Confederate
it's true.
And Confederate General Joseph Johnson decides to evacuate. And so they start retreating back to Richmond. And as the Confederate forces are evacuating to Richmond, William Franklin's division is offloading the ships. And so there's Slocum's brigade and Newton's brigade. And the Confederates see them and launch an attack. And the Confederates who are attacking, the element is the Texas Brigade commanded by John Bell Hood. Okay, and Hood's troops are supported by the South Carolina Legion commanded by Wade Hampton. Okay, so all familiar Confederate names here. Okay, or Gettysburg names. Newton calls for reinforcement. However, Franklin is back at the pier side trying to get the last brigade off the ship. And so Newton just turns to Slocum and says, hey, I need reinforcements. Newton is seen directing artillery. A signal officer is sent down to the waterfront to signal the Navy ships, and they begin to bombard the Confederates. And so, coordinating this defensive position, the Confederates break off the attack, continue on to Richmond. And so Newton's first time in combat, he does pretty well for himself. Doesn't see much action in the rest of the Peninsula Campaign, and the next time we see him in combat is going to be during the Antietam Campaign, specifically at the Battle of South Mountain at Crampton's Gap. Now, if you ever been to the Gap, you can't really send a brigade up that slope. And so Slocum comes, the plan is that Joseph Bartlett's brigade is going to be in the lead, followed by Newton, followed by Alfred Tolbert's brigade, okay? And Bartlett's brigade moves out, suffers the initial contact, Newton reinforces, and as Tolbert's coming up, Bartlett makes a suggestion, the only way we're going to carry this position is by charging. Now, Slocum is kind of back in the rear, getting Tolbert's brigade moving up, and so Slocum is not there to give the order. The senior brigade commander is Newton, and so Newton says, yeah, execute, let's go, charge up the hill. There's a little controversy here. Bartlett says, hey, Newton, stole my thunder. But everybody charges through the gap. They succeed. The Confederates retreat. And, oh, by the way, they're all rewarded for this action. Joseph Bartlett and Alfred Tolbert are both promoted to brigadier general, the rank that they will hold here at Gettysburg. Right. And Newton is promoted to major general. And so now he will assume command of the 3rd Division of the 6th Corps, part of the Left Grand Division at Fredericksburg.
Now, real quick, his promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there some kind of, and we don't have to get into this now, maybe we could just foreshadow, but isn't there some kind of controversy with his promotion?
There is. And so
we'll get to it later.
I'm going to get to the controversy here, but even today, the way promotions happen is that the Department of Defense submits the recommendation to the Senate, and the Senate has to confirm the promotion. And so while the Department of Defense has recommended, the general on the field has recommended Newton for promotion, and he's kind of starting to carry that star, if that promotion is not confirmed in 365 days, he will immediately be reduced back to 1 star.
Oh.
And so he is wearing the 2-star rank.
But it's a name only that he's got that promotion.
But it's a name
so he's not getting paid as a major general yet.
I don't know if he's getting paid or.
Well, I mean, would you get paid as a major general if you're waiting for approval?
Kind of now. And nowadays, there's a system called frocking. Okay, I pronounced that correctly to make sure nobody got upset. Okay,
really enunciate on that one.
Yeah, we know
it's called frocking.
Frocking. Yes, we're gonna put the rank on you because you're in that position. Now, whether or not the pay catches up with you.
Oh, frocking, I get it. You get like frock.
Yeah, you get the promotion.
You wear it.
Yeah, you wear the rank.
Yeah. You get treated that way.
That's right.
But that's not the same as paid.
That's not the same as paid.
No.
And so, you have to get your paid day of rank would be backdated or whatever.
Okay.
So here we are now in December of 1862. And Newton is the commander of the 3rd Division of the 6th Corps. The 6th Corps is now under the command of William F. Baldy Smith. And the 6th Corps is under the Left Grand Division, commanded by William Franklin. All right. When Burnside takes command of the Army, he adds an additional layer of bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. Here at Gettysburg, we would kind of say that the wing commander.
Right.
Okay. But at Gettysburg, at Fredericksburg, Burnside uses the term Grand Division Commander. And so a Grand Division Commander is in charge of 2 corps.
Right.
And Franklin is going to be in charge of the 1st Corps and the 6th Corps.
So they're essentially small army commanders within a larger army.
Yeah.
But and in here, it seems less cumbersome here with the wing commanders. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, is it because it's more of a temporary thing while the army is on the move, and then while they're sitting here, it's like you're in charge of a sector?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Here, because of the movement up, you could reach out and be the wing commander because they were so
like kind of somebody
out.
acting on in the stead of Meade, basically on that. Like Meade's or I guess it would have been Hooker that started that, and me just inherited it, right?
Right.
So, but still,
in today's Department of Defense, there's a lot of paperwork, obviously, and so if you were a Joint Task Force commander, you would get orders assigning you, and then when the mission is over, unassigning you as that task force, because there's authorities that come with it, and financial responsibilities, and a lot of other things that come with different titles. Like here at Gettysburg, Meade is like, okay, why are you still considering yourself a wing commander? We're all together again.
Right.
Oh, you need me to do the paperwork unassigning you? Okay. That's bureaucracy.
It's stupid, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
And so at Fredericksburg, this is where the major controversy begins, because Franklin will make the suggestion that Marye's Heights is just too strong, and Burnside needs to launch the attack on the Union left, where Franklin is, and so that way Franklin believes that he can break through the Confederate position and then maybe get behind Marye's Heights. And so Franklin starts doing all this arrangements for this attack, and then Burnside on the day of the attack issues an order saying, no, I want you to send one division and do a supporting attack. The main attack is going to be on Marye's Heights. And so, again, Burnside only told him he'd send one division, and so he does the bare minimum. And so the soldiers can see this. It looks like one general is not supporting another general, and so needless to say, after the battle, they're getting a little disgruntled, because whenever generals don't support each other, it's the individual privates that pay the price.
Sure.
And then they see the devastation in front of Marye's Heights with all the dead and wounded up there. And so morale in the Army of the Potomac just plummets. And so here we are getting into the Christmas season of 1862, and Newton says, hey, his morale is low. He's starting to hear subordinates speaking bad about the commander. That's insubordination. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, Franklin and Baldy Smith are openly talking bad about Burnside. Hooker's talking bad about Burnside. Again, this is just breeding discontent in the Army of the Potomac. And so Newton says, hey, you know what? I need a break. My family is near Washington. I'm going to go visit them. But you can't just be a division commander and leave the Army, especially when you're looking at the Confederates right across the Rappahannock River. So he has to go to Burnside and ask, are you planning another operation for me to be here? And Burnside says, well, as a matter of fact, I am, but my staff is advising me against doing it. And so what I want you to do, Newton, good engineer, I want you to go recon a site just south of the city where I'm planning on doing this attack. And so Newton rides off to do this reconnaissance, and he comes back and he goes, it's a terrible location. Down near a place called Muddy Creek. And the Confederates are right there. They're going to see us. They're going to be able to bring fire as we're crossing the river. And the only way to really get across an obstacle like a river is you have to get across very, very quickly. And as soon as you get to the other side, you got to dig in defenses, because your forces are separated on both sides of the river.
Right.
And because the Army is so, demoralized, he doesn't believe the soldiers will move fast enough to make this successful. And oh, by the way, Newton says, hey, because the Army's so demoralized, if we suffer another defeat, these guys are going to go home, and the whole Army is going to disband, and we won't just lose a battle, we'll lose the Union. And Burnside says, well, thanks a lot. That's not the input I wanted. That's not the answer I wanted. And so Burnside kind of dismisses Newton. Go away. Okay, thanks for that. Wasn't helpful. Okay, so now Newton's not happy with Burnside, and he goes to the 6th Corps commander to approve his leave, because obviously now Burnside's not going to attack because nobody supports this plan. And when he gets to the 6th Corps headquarters, he finds William Franklin and Baldy Smith together, and Newton kind of releases some steam. Hey, this guy's going to get a lot of people killed. There's a problem here. Somebody's got to do something about Burnside. And he goes, I'm going to go take some leave up in Washington. I wish there was somebody up there I could go talk to about Burnside. And William Franklin and Baldy Smith are kind of smiling at each other, because they just finished writing a letter to Lincoln pretty much suggesting the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Franklin and Smith say, yeah, your leave's approved. Go ahead to Washington. In fact, there's somebody in your command who's familiar with people up in Washington. and his name is John Cochran. Now, not Johnny Cochran of the O.J. trial,
Right.
okay? But John...
If the star don't fit, you must acquit.
That's right. John Cochran was actually a congressman before the battle, before the war. And so he's kind of politically connected. So Newton and Cochran go up to Washington on December 30th, but they can't find anybody to talk to, okay? Everybody's on vacation. It's almost New Year's. But we know who's home, the president. We know where he lives. And so they go down to the president. And so...
How lucky.
And so Lincoln loved to hear from his subordinates about what's going on the battlefield. But as they walk into the room, Newton starts to realize what's about to happen. If he talks bad about a senior officer, that's a court-martial offense called insubordination. And oh, by the way, Cochran is one of his subordinates. And if he talks bad about a senior officer in front of one of his subordinates, this is an additional court-martial offense called inciting mutiny. And then Newton starts to hem and haw, and he says in his later testimony before the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War that he had to address the topic indirectly. And he's tap dancing in front of Lincoln, and Lincoln sees right through it. And he says, "You're here to injure Burnside, or worse, you're here to petition for the promotion of Franklin or for the return of McClellan." And Lincoln is not going to have McClellan come back.
Right.
Okay? And that's when Newton realizes he's got to spill the beans. But he does it in such a way. He goes, "Sir, the soldiers under my command, humana. And he tells about the soldiers being demoralized, of what he has seen personally.
Right.
He also goes over to a map and he explains where Burnside plans on doing this attack and why Newton believed it was a bad idea and they would be defeated. And again, if the army is defeated this time, they're just going to disband and you're going to lose the Union. And at the end of it, Lincoln says, "Well, I hope something good comes out of this. And thank you very much." And they leave. And Lincoln contacts Burnside and says, "Execute no operations until you come talk to me." And so Burnside goes to see Lincoln, and Lincoln tells him about the visit of these two generals, but he doesn't tell Burnside the names of the generals who came. So this is an 1863 whistleblower protection kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
Well, Stanton freaks out. Halleck freaks out. Burnside wants to know the names, immediately wants these generals court-martialed. And Lincoln says, "I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the condition of your army. Go investigate your army." And so Burnside does go investigate, not his army, who these generals are,
of course,
conspiring against him.
Yeah.
And it was very easy to figure out Newton and Cochran because they were pretty much the only ones on leave. Okay. And then Stanton contacts Burnside and says, "Hey, why are two of your generals writing letters to the president?" The letter from Franklin and Smith. And then Burnside also throws in this additional guy, William T.H. Brooks, because he's had problems with Brooks in the past. And so now Burnside's like, "You know what? I'm going to prove these guys wrong." And so he develops a plan of attack. Instead of moving to the south, they're going to move to the north to try to cross over the Rapidan. And he issues the order to start moving on January 23rd. And then the skies open up and it begins to rain for the next 3 days. This is the famous Mud March. And so, frustrated by the weather and his generals, Burnside stops the movement, sits down and dictates Special Order Number 8, calling for the dismissal from service of Newton, Cochran, the reassignment of Franklin, Hooker, the dismissal of service of a number of other generals. Burnside is about to gut his senior commanders. But he can't do this without Lincoln's support. So he goes to see Lincoln and says, "Support me or I resign." Now, Lincoln didn't like to fire generals and throw them away. He would kind of put them in timeout in a distant location, okay? And so Lincoln says, "You know what? Oh, okay, thanks, Burnside. I appreciate it. I'm going to accept your resignation." And Burnside is sent out to take command of the Department of the Ohio. He replaces Horatio Wright, and Wright comes to the Army of the Potomac. I call that a good trade.
Okay.
Now, Lincoln's got a problem now because he has to pick a new commander of the Army of the Potomac, and he's got 3 choices.
Wait, let me stop you here because I have a question.
Okay.
Going back to when Newton and Cochrane go to Lincoln and the violations they're committing in potentially in doing that.
Yeah.
I've always wondered if there is a commanding officer who is grossly incompetent or violating some kind of law. I mean, there's that scene in Glory where Shaw is ordered to tell his men to burn the town.
Burn the town.
And he says, it's an Immoralata, and I, blah, 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 blah. And he threatens to take his men away from him. There's that beautiful dramatic moment. I don't know if it played out exactly that way, but in the movie it works. So Shaw relents and he follows the order that he had a problem with. What is there in place, or is there anything in place, either in the Civil War or today, for a subordinate officer to let someone over the head of his superior know, hey, this guy is dangerous for one reason or another?
So in the Civil War, and they still exist today, there is the Inspector General. Okay. But from what I've read of Inspector General reports of the Civil War, it's mostly the Inspector General coming down to make sure things are happening, rather than what happens today is, when I commanded troops in the Army, there's a couple of things, okay, in modern times. Today we have an open door policy. So as a company commander, and then whenever I was a staff officer and I had troops working for me, I had an open door policy. Please, at any time if you see something, say something, come talk to me.
Now, that's your policy, not like a requirement in the Army?
Well, that was my policy that I read to the soldiers and posted just to make sure that they knew.
But that was your decision, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's the way you decided to run your.
Almost every leadership school in the military now says have an open door policy.
This is recommended.
Yeah, and I guarantee you that the post inspector generals, when they come down to do spot checks, they're going to ask, "You got an open door policy?" Right. So pretty much everybody has it. Okay. If they don't want to use the open door policy, they can go directly to the inspector general. Okay. And so there is a policy for that. Now, today, in every military headquarters that you walk into, there's pictures of the battalion commander, brigade commander, division commander, all the way up to the president. And so technically, they're all in your chain of command. And so today, you can go see anybody in your chain of command if you've got a problem with your immediate supervisor.
So but they still have those, I don't know if they're laws or codes or whatever you call them,
whistleblower.
Well, no, but I mean about insubordination and inciting, what was it?
Inciting mutiny.
Inciting mutiny. Those are still on the books.
Yes, they're still on the books.
So let's say I'm a lieutenant.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a first lieutenant, you're my captain, you're my superior, and you're trying to get me to do something that I just know is wrong.
I issue you an unlawful order.
Yes.
Go shoot those civilians.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know why you chose that one. You went a little dark really soon there. But okay. So, go shoot those civilians.
Yes.
And we're in the field. We're not on base.
Yep.
And this is theoretical. And it's like tomorrow we're going to go out and shoot these civilians. We're out there now.
Yes. Yep.
And you tell me to do that, and I can't do it.
That's right.
And then, but now you're threatening me with this, that, and the other. Like, what do I do? What do I do in that situation?
So again, yesterday when I was out on the staff ride with the officers, I give them historical examples. You can't just say, I was ordered to do something, which is the defense they used
in Nuremberg.
In Nuremberg, exactly. The My Lai incident in Vietnam.
Yeah.
The incident with the soldiers urinating on dead Taliban people.
Right.
The incident where somebody shot a Koran. I'm like, I said, you got to control your soldiers, okay? You got to do it, and you do that by leading example with integrity and honesty in your Army values and stuff. So I tell you to go do something that's unlawful. You respond by telling me to go do some sexual act to myself.
Frocking. You mean to go yourself.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Cindy, I'm blushing here. Yes. And so technically you could be charged with insubordination because you cannot tell me to go frock myself. Okay.
Right. So
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. So it's
Right.
like,
That's insubordination.
it's do this immoral or unlawful order.
Right.
Or follow this order. Or
Yeah.
I'm going to do something to you that I, as your superior, have the power to do.
Right. Yeah. So that's the extreme circumstance.
Okay.
The other circumstance is I want you to go charge up that hill, and you tell me, go screw you. I'm not doing it. We're under fire. And I'm like, no, you need to go do this. Okay. Because the only way we're going to get out of this firefight is for you to attack very aggressively.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm putting your life at danger. Okay. Because guess what? You've got the machine gun. I need you to lay down a base of fire.
Right.
We need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And you tell me, screw you, I'm not doing it. Well, that's insubordination.
That's different.
That's
Yeah, but in the case of these guys going to Lincoln, they're concerned for the well-being of the men under their care and command.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Right?
And so Newton testified before the Joint Committee. That's why he did it.
Right. It's not so much that Burnside is ordering something immoral.
Correct.
It's that he's incompetent, maybe, or not incompetent, but maybe just not making good decisions. What is it that their real gripe is?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Is that they believe that he's not making good decisions.
Okay.
Okay. And now, read William Marvel's book on Burnside, and he gives it from Burnside's perspective. Mark Snell has a book from first to last,
Snell is From First to Last, The Life of
From
William
First to
Franklin.
Last.
I'll read
He's
him
got
at
a
the end
book
of the
on
show
William
for
Franklin.
everybody.
And so he gives you Franklin's opinion. For me, I love the original source, which is Newton's testimony on the joint from the Joint Committee, and he says he wasn't there for personal gain. He wasn't there on behalf of Franklin. He wasn't there to undermine Burnside. He was really concerned that they were going to lose the Union. And so that's his defense. Nowadays, yes, I technically have the authority to write a letter to the president, write a letter to my congressman, write a letter to the inspector general, and say, hey, I don't like this guy. He didn't approve my leave. He works me too hard.
Yeah, that's what it mostly is now anyway, right?
There's, he's a racist. And, it happens.
Sure.
And people are disgruntled. And oh, by the way, people have justified concerns as well.
Of course. And in the most part, though, I'm guessing a lot of those things are just ignored because they're petty little goofy things. Or, they have to.
Yeah. I got a phone call from the inspector general. Hey, one of your soldiers said this. And I said, oh, thank you very much. And I did my own investigation. He did his own investigation. And yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Well, anyway, so let's get back then to the Civil War. So Mud March, Burnside resigns.
That's right.
And then where are we?
And so now Lincoln has to decide who the new Army commander is going to be. Mm-hmm. And so he's got a choice between Franklin, Edwin Sumner, or Joseph Hooker. And so Lincoln chooses Hooker. Hooker is the junior of the three. Okay. Edwin Sumner says, screw you, I'm not taking orders from a junior officer. There's going to be a lot of that during this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Lincoln says, thank you very much. You're going to be reassigned. And so he goes home on leave. And when his new orders come for his new assignment, he gets up to go to his new assignment and drops dead. And so, sorry for Edwin Sumner.
So it wouldn't really worked out well for him anyways, Army commander.
Yeah,
probably would have died.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Gotta, stay healthy.
Right.
William Franklin has already undermined Burnside. And so Lincoln says, yeah, it's probably time for you to leave too. And so William Franklin goes home on leave to York, Pennsylvania. Oh. And he is in York in June of 1863 when the Confederates come to town. Ah. And he tries to advise the mayor, here's how best to defend your town. And then he heads out of town so he's not captured.
Smart.
He will be reassigned down to the Department of the Gulf, where he will participate in the fabulous Red River Campaign, which which does not go very well.
No.
Okay, and that's pretty much the end of Franklin. The Grand Divisions obviously go away under Hooker. Baldy Smith is also breveted Major General, just like Newton, and the Congress says, we're not going to approve your promotion, and so he's reduced back to Brigadier General. So you can't be a Corps commander as a Brigadier General, especially when Major General John Sedgwick is in your chain of command, and so that's how Sedgwick gets command of the 6th Corps.
Aha, okay.
Luckily for Baldy Smith, a new command opens up. It's the Department of the Susquehanna in Harrisburg, because during the invasion, 2 new military departments are established in Pennsylvania. The first is the Department of the Susquehanna, and so Baldy Smith is in Harrisburg training the emergency militia forces when the Confederates come north, and when the Confederates evacuate Carlisle, Baldy Smith marches into Carlisle to reclaim it for the Union when all of a sudden Jeb Stuart shows up. Okay, and so Smith defends Carlisle from Jeb Stuart, and then Jeb Stuart gets the note that Lee wants to see him in Gettysburg.
Get back, yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, but the Department of the Susquehanna is in, when is that created? Is that already in existence?
I think it's created in the June.
It is. That's what I thought. Like that and the Monongahela are created right as the invasion is going.
See, you're a perfect straight man, because I'm going to talk about the Monongahela as well. And people make fun of me because I can't pronounce it correctly. For Baldy Smith, though,
I wanted to say it for you so that you could remember how I said it and then say it right.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. We'll just replay that one.
I had a feeling.
Baldy Smith is actually sent out west to Chattanooga, and he helps establish the Cracker Line that provides food to the besieged Union forces out there. And so for this, guess what? Smith is promoted again to Major General, and he's sent to take command of the 18th Army Corps under Benjamin Butler's Army of the James. The 18th Corps will fight at Cold Harbor, suffer tremendous casualties, and then Grant orders Baldy Smith to lead the effort to capture Petersburg. Because of the experience at Cold Harbor, Smith moves slow, and that gives the Confederates time to shift reinforcements to Petersburg, and what could have been a very quick victory and end the war in 1964 now turns into a 9-month-long siege, and so Grant's not happy. And so Baldy Smith is going to be pushed out of the service. For William T.H. Brooks, this other division commander who's sucked up into the conspiracy, Brooks is going to be reassigned to, Brooks's troops will perform very well at the Second Battle of Fredericksburg and the Battle of Salem Church during the Chancellorsville campaign. And so Brooks is going to be sent to take command of the Department of the Monongahela, there it is. And because there was real concern that Lee was going to...
Monongahela. Yes, I thought you were leading me into Monongahela.
Yeah, again. There you go. To Pittsburgh to burn rail yards, burn factories, start fires in coal mines. Luckily for Brooks, the Confederates don't go that way. Unfortunately for Brooks, his promotion is also going to be revoked, and he's sent back to take a division in the 18th Army Corps. And so we have 2 conspirators, Smith and Brooks, back together again. Yeah. It's Brooks's division that will suffer the tremendous casualties at Cold Harbor. And after that battle, Brooks gets ill. To the point that he can't serve anymore. He leaves the service. After the war, he heads south. I hope that the climate will be good for his health. It's not. He dies in Huntsville, Alabama, shortly after the war. Replacing Brooks in command of the Army of the Potomac when he went to the Department of the Monongahela is Horatio Wright. And so that's how Wright is now part of the 6th Corps. Okay, so for Johnny Cochran... After they leave Lincoln's office, Cochran knows that they're going to be court-martialed. And so Cochran goes, I got a cold, and claims illness, and so he leaves the service for health reasons. In 1864, he was quite healthy when he was on the campaign trail with John C. Fremont. You see, Fremont's running for president, and he wants Cochran to be his VP, except that right before the election, Fremont backs out, and so Cochran's kind of left holding the bag. Don't feel bad for Cochran, because after the all the trials and issues with Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall break, Cochran will actually become the mayor of New York City.
Oh, all right. So he's going somewhere.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's going to survive it.
Mayor of New York City is almost like being president.
There you go.
You know.
Politicians always do.
Yeah.
Replacing Cochran in brigade command is Alexander Shaler. Okay. As far as Newton is concerned, Newton remains in command of the 3rd Division of the 6th Corps, fights very well during the Second Battle of Fredericksburg, and it's Newton's troops that capture Marye's Heights. And so now, as we're in June of 63 heading north, Newton is the senior division commander in the 6th Corps. And if you take a look at all the major generals in the Army of the Potomac, and you kind of put a line under all the ones that are already in Corps Command, have already had Corps Command, or the Army commander, like Meade and Butterfield, then there's 4 major generals traveling with the Army of the Potomac in date of rank order: Abner Doubleday, Carl Schurz, John Newton, and David Birney. Okay, so keep that in mind.
You're saying major generals who are not corps commanders.
Correct.
Okay.
They are not Corps commanders.
So there's 4 divisions led by major generals. All the rest in the whole army are brigadier generals. Interesting.
Yeah. And so so
see, that's a good thing to know.
There you go. So they're ready to assume the next position.
Yeah.
Or they're ready to be reassigned to some other command or whatever. Okay. And so now let's get into Gettysburg, because here it is, July 1st. Newton is with his division and the 6th Corps marching to Manchester. Reynolds is killed, and Doubleday assumes command of the Corps. Howard arrives on the field. There's message traffic being sent down to Meade down in Taneytown. Okay, and what is he hearing? Reynolds is dead. John Buford says, doesn't look like anybody's in charge up here. Okay, and so if you're Meade, what does that mean? Does that mean Reynolds is dead and Doubleday hasn't assumed command of the 1st Corps? Or does that mean Howard is on the field and he's not assuming command of the field? And so how do you fix that problem? Well, to fix the Howard problem, you send Hancock. Okay? But what about Doubleday? So now, do you start thinking about putting somebody else in command of the 1st Corps? Okay? And so there's a little issue here as far as timing. We know that there are 3 messages sent to Sedgwick. 2 of them have timestamps on them. 1 does not. The first one is sent to Sedgwick saying, Reynolds was killed. There's an engagement going on. I need for you to immediately move from Manchester, because the 6th Corps is on the extreme right flank of the Army. And they're way now out of position because Meade has now found the Confederates. And so Sedgwick is ordered to immediately get his 6th Corps moving. And so they will start moving towards Taneytown. Okay. Now, later in the day, Hancock, comes up to Gettysburg, commits that this is the place where the fight is going to be at Gettysburg. Then Hancock helps position 1st Corps troops over by Stevens Knoll, Culp's Hill, and then heads back to go get his 2nd Corps and start moving up here. Sooner or later, Meade arrives here about midnight after the first day, and he gets a report from Howard. Hey, good position. We're staying here. Oh, by the way, here's what happened today. The 1st Corps acted badly, and that's why we had to retreat. And so now, if you're worried about Doubleday and you don't like Doubleday, here's an opportunity for Meade to replace Doubleday. Okay. And so now a second message is sent to Sedgwick saying, don't go to Taneytown. I need you here tomorrow in Gettysburg. And Sedgwick, by this time, is already past the Baltimore Pike when he receives this message, and he has to stop, turn around, and then come up the Baltimore Pike. The last correspondence that's sent to Sedgwick is the order placing Newton in command of the 1st Corps. Okay, and so Thomas Hyde, in his book, Service with the Six, Under the Greek Cross. Where did I get the 6 foot? immediately went to Dawes. I'm talking about First Corps.
Right.
Yeah, under the Greek cross. Thomas Hyde says in his account that he was the one who, after midnight, delivered 2 messages to Sedgwick, and one of them was the order to Newton. Okay. John Newton's aide, Lieutenant Huntington W. Jackson, in the Mallis collection, he says that at about 8 or 9 o'clock while they were at Manchester, the message came in putting Newton in command. And so we're just not sure if it's the earlier message, then Meade has pretty much made the decision before Howard's report to replace Doubleday.
So, in other words, not colored by any negative reporting of the First Corps' behavior
of Howard.
from Howard.
From
Howard of Doubleday.
Right. So is it just that Meade doesn't like Doubleday, put whoever I want in command, and so Newton rides off and assumes command of the First Corps.
Okay.
Now, Doubleday doesn't say anything about this. Okay, initially. Okay, bear with me. Initially, remember, Newton graduated higher than Doubleday at West Point.
Right.
Maybe Doubleday just, Meade put him in charge. He must outrank me. Okay.
Right. They don't sit there. They don't have a list of each other's date of promotion.
Yeah. You don't pull out your ID card and go, show me your.
I mean, I'm sure like some guys know because maybe they were in proximity and they remember when it happened. But for the most part, these guys don't know who's outranking who, right?
Yeah. Now,
for the most part.
When I was in the Army, yes, I knew my date of promotion.
You knew yours, but you didn't know.
I didn't know
the other. I didn't know colonels, right? No,
right. Yeah, you didn't do that. And so during the first day, first day's over, second day happens, and do we talk about Newton during the second day? No. We talk about the Vermonters moving down and helping out Meade in the center. What ends up happening is that Meade is calling for troops to fill the gap in the center of the line on the second. When a staff officer, artillery commander, Captain John Tidball, rides up behind Newton and says, "Sir, I'm sorry to see your line's about to be penetrated here." And Meade said, "It's okay. I got the 12th Corps coming over from Culp's Hill." And Tidball kind of looks and he sees flags on Cemetery Hill and he goes, "Okay, sir, but there's soldiers laying idle right over there." And then Meade turns and remembers there's 2 divisions of the First Corps, Robinson and Doubleday's, on the western slopes of Cemetery Hill.
Right.
Okay. The 1st Division is over at Culp's Hill. So Newton has really only got those 2 divisions. Okay. And so Meade says to Tidball, "Go get me Newton now." And Tidball rides off. Newton sees where Tidball is coming from. He can see what's going on. And so Newton turns to Doubleday. He says, "Get your division going, and I will get Robinson." And so Doubleday gets the Vermonters going, and the Vermonters come down, leading Doubleday's division, turn up onto Cemetery Ridge behind the copse of trees, and pretty much arrive there just as Wright's brigade is being repulsed. Robinson's division continues heading south on the Tawnytown Road, and roughly where the Pennsylvania Monument is today, that's where Robinson's division initially goes into position on the evening of July 2nd. And now the center is the gap is plugged, and so Newton rides up to Meade, hands him a flask, and says, "Congratulations, sir." and Meade says, "For what?" He goes, for saving the position. And oh, by the way, the enemy they have beaten you into a solid position that you can't be moved out of.
Right.
And Meade kind of rides off because he's got to find out what's going on down at Little Round Top. And then we see Newton at the Council of War. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Council of War later, but at the Council of War, this is where a lot of people go, aha, this is where Newton is Meade's mouthpiece, okay, air quotes, mouthpiece, because Newton is going to say the things that Meade cannot say.
Okay.
Gettysburg is no place for a battle. We need to reposition. Confederates are going to outflank us at the Round Tops. We got to get out of here, okay? Meade wants to retreat, but he can't say that in front of the troops, okay? And so Newton is saying it as a payback for Meade promoting him to Corps Command, okay? That's what some people have suggested.
So this isn't known, and this is suggested that this is what happened.
That's what some people suggest, is that Newton is Meade's mouthpiece because the accusation
Based on what?
It just because Newton, because I think the individual said Meade selected Newton over more qualified generals. And that's when I come back and go, well, yes, Meade technically could have selected Grant. Right. He was a major general.
Yeah.
Sherman or Sheridan, but they weren't traveling with the Army of the Potomac.
Right.
Okay. Newton's right here. And oh, by the way, who are you going to put in position of the First Corps? Again, let's go back to the 4 generals. Okay. The 4 major generals traveling with the Army of the Potomac. Doubleday. Well, he's already had his shot at Corps Command. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, Meade doesn't fire him. He doesn't say go home. He just sent him back to his division.
Just go back to you, right, where you belong.
That's it. Just go back to your division. Hey, you had a bad day. You'll be ready to be a Corps Commander tomorrow.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And why is he doing that? Because the First Corps retreated on the first day? Okay. Well, who's next in seniority? Carl Schurz. Well, if you're not going to put Doubleday in command because his corps retreated, are you going to put Schurz in command because the 11th Corps retreats too? And remember, Schurz is the acting 11th Corps commander while Howard's in charge of the field. And oh, by the way, Carl Schurz is connected to all the German immigrants.
Right, right.
You're not going to move Schurz away from the 11th Corps, especially when Sedgwick doesn't speak. I'm sorry, Howard doesn't speak German. So who's next in line in order of date of rank? John Newton. Okay, and after him, David Birney. Oh, by the way, are you going to move Birney away from Sickles?
No.
Birney's got military education.
Right.
Sickles does not.
Sickles is not.
Okay.
And Birney is Sickles' senior division commander, correct?
Correct.
So if, God forbid, or God willing, depending on what you thought of Sickles, he's taken out, Birney's going to be the guy in charge of the 3rd Corps.
A regular Army
Which
officer.
is exactly what happens.
Which is exactly what happens.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And so that's why Meade chooses Newton. He's next in the order. He's next at bat. And oh, by the way, he's readily available. Okay? Now
do we know, like, when Newton was in command, do we have any stories of Doubleday trying to take his ball and go home, or being, obstinate or hard to work with, or anything? I'll tell
you that in a second.
Okay.
But now I'm going to very quickly cover July 3rd, and this is the part that will drive everybody insane.
Great. Need some controversy.
Because at the end of Pickett's charge, everybody goes, woohoo, high five, and it's over. What they don't realize is that on the Tawnytown Road, Newton has built a response force. He's ready to go. You see, on the morning of July 3rd, Meade has been riding around the Union position, and he's got the advice from the Council of War in his head about we have to be careful of the Confederates turning our flank. So Meade rides down to Sedgwick on the Round Tops early in the morning of July 3rd and says, you need to send a couple of brigades to the Tawnytown Road and have them facing south. Okay, those are the monuments along Howell and Wright Avenue, facing to the south. Okay, and so, and that all happens on the morning of the 3rd. As Meade is riding north along Cemetery Ridge, he runs into Newton, and Newton's like, hey, remember last night David Birney said the 3rd Corps is pretty much used up? If the Confederates attack today, I'm not going to get any support from the 3rd Corps. Can I get some reinforcements down here? And Meade says, yeah, go talk to Sedgwick. And so he goes to his old 6th Corps commander and talks to Sedgwick. And Sedgwick says, hey, I'm not going to give you anybody now, but if the attack comes your way, I'll send you support. And Newton's like, yeah, okay, cool. If somebody attacks a Round Top, I'll come to your effort. Okay, mutual agreement. Oh, by the way, Newton doesn't have any artillery because Wainwright and all the 1st Corps artillery is on East Cemetery Hill.
Oh, yes.
And so it's like, hey, if you can't send me any infantry, can you send me at least a battery from the 6th Corps artillery? And Sedgwick sends Cowan's battery. Okay. Have you ever wondered why a 6th Corps battery is right in the middle of the 2nd Corps line?
I actually have. Yeah.
Cowan, in his official record, says he was ordered to report to Newton, but he couldn't find Newton, so Doubleday told him to stay in the rear, and if a battery had to reposition, he could then move forward. Okay.
So that's why he's up there. Now, I always knew that the 6th Corps was used to they were kind of sort of cannibalized to go and reinforce different parts of the line. Yeah. So I always assumed that it had something to do with that, but I never heard the actual story of how he got there.
Yeah, the 6th Corps artillery is pretty much turned over to Henry Hunt, and all the batteries that you see where the cyclorama used to be on Ziegler's Grove, the batteries in the cemetery, the batteries that are along the 20-town road right out in front of that house. Yeah, down by the Patterson farm. Those are 6th Corps artilleries because they're the backup line. So that way Hunt could pull them forward. And so Newton does go see Birney and ask for support. And when Pickett's charge happens, that support will start coming to Newton. Eustis's brigade gets pulled off of Munshauer's Hill and starts marching north on the Taneytown Road. We know this because in Elijah Hunt Rhodes' account of the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry, he talks about being shelled from the cannonade because the rounds that are going over the ridgeline are landing on Eustis's brigade on the road. Tolbert's New Jersey brigade, where the big watchtower is.
Yep.
Have you ever gone out there and looked at their flank markers?
Not the flank markers, no. Just the monument.
Yeah, we'll have to take you out there and look at the flank markers.
Okay.
Because they're not facing west. They're facing north because Tolbert's New Jersey brigade actually starts to swing out to get ready to go help out at Pickett's charge.
That makes sense.
This is Sedgwick, sending the support to Newton. Okay? Who else is next in line? You got Birney. If you ever look behind the copse of trees, you may see some 3rd Corps markers back there. One of them is to the 17th Maine, the beautiful marker down in the monument down on the wheat field. Yeah, those are 3rd Corps troops that Newton calls on Birney, send me support. Okay, well, the next unit in line is who? Caldwell's division. Okay, and now here again, this is going to prevent the counterattack that happens that doesn't happen on the afternoon of July 3rd. Earlier, I said Robinson's 2nd Division of the 1st Corps came down to the Pennsylvania Monument. Well, when Doubleday and Robinson's division get off East Cemetery Hill, guess what? There's now a big hole on the western slopes of Cemetery Hill. And so Robinson's division is ordered to go back to Cemetery Hill. Now Newton has one division on Culp's Hill, one division on Cemetery Hill, and one division Doubleday's right in the center of the line. Is he really a corps commander or just a glorified division commander? Well, Hancock says, hey, oh, by the way, I want to reconnect my entire corps together, so I want you to move Doubleday's division to the left and have Caldwell's division come to the right so the 2nd Corps can be all together. And Newton's like, are you kidding me? That means my divisions are going to be even further apart. How about we make a deal? You take care of Robinson on your right, I'll take care of Caldwell on my left. And Hancock's okay with that. In fact, Hancock and Newton are at the chicken barbecue early in the day of July 2nd.
Go
ahead. And so Caldwell will also be responding to Newton as well as Doubleday's troops supporting Newton. And last but not least, Alexander Shaler's brigade, which on the morning of the 3rd was over on Culp's Hill, is no longer needed on Culp's Hill. They're sent back to Sedgwick. And as they're coming west on the Granite Schoolhouse Lane, they are told to stop and report to Newton. And there are casualties in Shaler's brigade from the shells coming over. So, this is a second line that Newton is forming along the Taneytown Road, just in case Pickett's charge succeeds.
So we never really hear a lot about that. Actually, we never hear about this. I mean, there's a reference to, there being. I've heard some people say about 7,000 troops on the eastern slope of Cemetery Ridge, but Hancock's only accounting for what, like 5,000 of those?
Yeah.
Ish?
Yeah, for this.
Ish. I mean, because we don't even know. So So I'm always like, well, where are these other 2,000 coming from? I mean, I knew that the First Corps was in that region, like that more towards the center of the line. Mm-hmm. But you never hear anything about it. And I've seen those Third Corps monuments there. And again, I kind of always assumed that, well, after they got their asses handed to them, they kind of just scattered them about and whatever. But really, like, Newton is forming a hodgepodge corps of like whatever's left of the guys that were previously engaged and some fresh troops from the Sixth Corps to counterattack if need be.
If need be.
And now is that him kind of going, hey, I guess might as well, while I'm here, might as well do this? Or is Meade saying, do that?
Yeah, Meade's not even there.
So remember, this isn't an order. This is him just using the initiative.
I think he's just using the initiative.
Wow.
And so, and again, I'm not taking anything away from Hancock. Hancock is right on the front line. Okay, when Brown's battery has to pull out of their position and there's an opening, there is a Second Corps officer waving at Cowan saying, come forward, come forward. And Cowan's like, I can't report to the Second Corps. I'm here to support the First Corps. And in Cowan's account, he said, under my own authority, I said, I'm going for it. And that's how Cowan shows up. Okay, so even in today's military, the major general commanding a division has two subordinate commanders, two brigadier generals, the assistant division commander for maneuver and assistant division commander for support. Okay, and so there is typically somebody feeding troops to the frontline leader. Okay, and so Hancock's going to get a lot of that glory, but if it wasn't for those guys behind the line feeding that ammunition and getting those reinforcements coming forward, that's they're not going to get all that glory. So and Cowan taking his own initiative and going ahead and supporting the second when he should have been there for the first. And if you read the history of the Second Corps, there's some grumblings there that if Caldwell's division would have been allowed to move to the right, it would have been Caldwell's division doing the flanking attack, not Doubleday and the Vermonters. Because if we tell the story of the Vermonters doing the flank attack, it makes it appear that the First Corps had to save the Second Corps. Okay, and so you can see how after the war, everybody's kind of jockeying for the best possible positions. But if you just read the individual accounts, you can piece it all together.
Sure.
So
We should go to the right.
Okay. So July 3rd is done.
Yeah. So one of the other controversies here, and I'm sorry, and I'm just going to keep talking because you haven't kicked me out yet. And so on July 3rd, well, some people are going to come back and say, well, wait a second, wasn't Hancock the commander of the center? Okay, well, this goes back to our earlier conversations. Show me the order putting Hancock in command of the center.
Right.
Because it doesn't exist during the battle. Afterwards, Meade said, oh, yeah, I put Hancock in charge. Okay, Hunt says, I didn't think Hancock was in charge. And everybody else responded to Newton.
But he's wait. But Hancock's at least in charge of his sector, like where his men are, and his men are being attacked.
And Hancock, by data rank, outranks Newton. And so, yes, you can have first amongst equals, like the Howard Hancock situation on July 1st. And so it doesn't surprise me that Meade, riding north on Cemetery Hill, goes, oh, by the way, in Winfield, watch out for Newton. He's brand new at this job. Okay. And so Hancock can go, oh, well, okay, that means he's under my control.
Right.
And technically he is, because he's
right behind you.
He is a senior ranking officer.
Right. Yeah.
And so, now.
But not only that, but I mean, he's right behind him. There's an emergency situation, and he can't turn around to Newton and say, give me whatever,
Yes. And so, again.
And Newton could see what's going on.
Newton can see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and so Newton is asked later on in life, how do you feel about Hancock? He goes, he was a wonderful officer. Takes a little bit more credit than he should have, but he's a wonderful officer. And that's pretty much all Newton says about it. After the Battle of Gettysburg, Newton stays with the First Corps. Okay, he is in support of Warren when the mine run operation is supposed to happen, and when Warren calls it off, Newton's like, "Thank God." But when we get into 1864, Meade submits a plan to reorganize the army, and he's going to keep Newton in command. And a big army comes back and says, "No, you're not. We're going to disband the First Corps." And so Newton now loses his rank because Congress did not confirm him. And so he is now reduced back to being a brigadier general.
Now, do you think that might have anything to do with him being a Virginian? Was there any doubt about his loyalty to the Union?
I think there's an opportunity here to blame him as a Virginian. I know some people like to use the term McClellanite, and so same thing here. Yeah, same thing here. Right. I don't know what political affiliation he was. That may have had something to do with it as well. Newton is going to be sent out west to take command of a division, and he replaces Philip Sheridan in division command. So he takes Sheridan's old division. And the commander of the Fourth Corps is Oliver Otis Howard. And so Newton's working directly under Howard. They didn't have any problems at Gettysburg, and they're not going to have any problems out west, except their new army commander is George Thomas. Thomas is also a Virginian. He's born in Franklin County, which is not far away from Norfolk. And so Newton and Thomas hit it off fabulously. They're good friends for the rest of their lives as well. Thomas's army is one of multiple armies that is under William Tecumseh Sherman in his campaign, his Atlanta campaign. It's Newton's forces that will fight at Kennesaw Mountain, and Newton's forces that are ordered to cross the river, Peachtree Creek, to go move on capturing Atlanta. Now, remember, Newton knows a lot about crossing rivers, okay, and amphibious operations. And so he tells his troops, got to get across quickly. We're going to go 2 brigades up front, one in the rear, and by the way, as soon as you get to the other side, dig in, because that's the perfect time for the Confederates to attack. Well, the new commander of the Confederate forces is John Bell Hood, and he attacks. And so this is almost like a repeat of 1862's Battle of Eltham's Landing, Hood versus Newton. Okay, and just simplify it here. A good portion of Hood's forces attack, hit Newton's line. Because he has 2 up, 1 back, Newton is able to absorb the shock of this attack. Howard, in his account, writes that Newton's cross, 2 up, 1 back, actually saved the day. And for his actions here, later on in his career, Newton will be once again recommended for promotion, Major General. Okay, Newton is going to be reassigned to take command of the Department of Key West and the Tortugas, and so he's sent to Florida. In Florida, there's a lot of contraband being moved around, and the city of Tampa, the city of Fort Myers are constantly being raided by Confederates. And so Newton decides to gather up all the Army and Navy troops that he can get, and it includes a large number of U.S. colored troops. And so here we have a Virginian in blue uniform leading colored troops. And he puts them on ships, and they head towards Tallahassee. Now, his intent is to land this force at the St. Marks River and capture the towns nearby. And there's a train line that goes up the St. Marks River that goes into Tallahassee. Maybe he can capture the capital of Florida. But initially, it is really to plug up the St. Marks River to prevent any convoy raiders and coming out of there. When Newton's forces get near the river, there's a fog. They get dispersed. Some of them run aground, and by the time he gets his troops offloaded, the Confederates have noticed, and they burn a bridge over the St. Marks River, and so he can't get across the river. But a local guide tells him that about 12 miles up the road, the river actually goes underground, creating a natural bridge. And so Newton's forces will march north, and at the Battle of Natural Bridge, U.S. colored troops almost defeat a Confederate force. except everybody in Tallahassee who's got a gun, come on down. And so Newton starts to see all this Florida militia reinforcing the Confederate line. The Navy ships cannot get farther up the St. Marks to provide naval gunfire. And so even if he could get to Tallahassee, he probably can't hold it. And so he will turn around and head home. And on March 6, 1865, just a couple of weeks before Appomattox, unfortunately, Newton will hand the Confederates one of their last victories of the Civil War at the Battle of Natural Bridge.
Interesting.
After the war, Newton is going to be assigned to take command of the defenses of New York City, and his headquarters is at Governor's Island. Now, in Governor's Island, that is where Gouverneur Warren's Court of Inquiry will take place. And Newton and Hancock are two of the three-judge panel. And so for weeks and months at a time, Newton will sit there and listen to all this testimony. And when it's all said and done, Newton will recommend that Warren should be exonerated. There was no reason whatsoever for Philip Sheridan to relieve Gouverneur Warren after the Battle of Five Forks. And so Newton helps Warren regain his reputation. Unfortunately, when the report is sent to the Chief of Staff of the Army, one William Tecumseh Sherman, a friend of Sheridan, Sherman adds a line to the report saying, the commander on the battlefield must have trust and confidence in his subordinate. And obviously Sheridan did not have that in Warren and was thus justified in relieving Warren. If these words were meant to hurt Warren, they come too late because Warren dies in 1882 and the report comes out in 1883. Meanwhile, what Newton's doing in New York City is he's approving the permit for the Brooklyn Bridge because you can't have a bridge that would interfere with the defenses of New York City, which is Newton's job.
Yeah.
And the Brooklyn Bridge crosses the East River.
Right.
Now, the East River is technically not a river. If you look at a map of New York City, you'll see the Bay of New York, the Hudson River, the Harlem River, and they all come together at the East River, and they meet the Long Island Sound. When it's high tide on the Hudson River, it kind of sucks water out of the East River. And when it's low tide, it pushes the water back in. So the East River doesn't have a source. It's And
not Hudson Bay.
The Hudson River and the Bay of New York.
Bay of New York, yeah.
And so by all terms, it's really not an
It's like more of a canal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now,
all along the East River, there's a whole bunch of different rocky kind of coral reefs. I'll just say it like that. And since 1850, the New Yorkers have been throwing explosives overboard to try to reduce these rocks because of all this water moving around and all these rocks. The ship captains in New York City actually called this part of the East River Hellgate. Okay, it goes back to the Amsterdam kind of Dutch term Hellgate, and they also call it the graveyard of New York City, like Cape Hatteras. This is where all the ships keep going down.
Okay,
and so Newton will go to Astoria, Queens, near where I grew up. I never heard this story before I did this research. And he builds a cofferdam at a place called Hallett's Point, and he actually tunnels underneath the East River. He hollows out a good portion of Hallett's Point, packs it with 30,000 pounds of explosives, brings his 2-year-old daughter, Mary Newton, to work one day. She pushes the button and lets off this massive explosion that sinks the East River. And it's so successful that Newton sets his eyes out in the middle of the East River. There's a 9-acre rock called Flood Rock. And he tunnels down into the rock, hollows it out, packs it with 300,000 pounds of explosives, brings his 11-year-old daughter, Mary Newton, to work one day. Bring your daughter to work day.
Right.
And she will set off the explosion. Now, everybody in New York City is along the East River expecting this massive fireball in every window in New York City to break. And all of a sudden, they feel the ground rumbling underneath them, and water geysers start to shoot 250 feet into the air. There's photographs of the explosion. There you go. There you go. There's photographs of the explosion and photographs of people going out into the East River to get a souvenir. You know, just like in Gettysburg, people would come here to get a souvenir. Yeah, they went into the East River to get a piece of a rock. Now, look at the people in that boat, especially the women. They're fully dressed. Yeah, if they go overboard,
they're going under.
They're going under. And most people back then didn't know how to swim.
So wait a second. So he blows this up to make the river deeper, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so how are people getting rocks?
Oh, yeah, there is remnants of it. In fact, if
like
you go to
big pile of it?
Yeah, it's a big pile
that's
of
coming up to the surface.
Yeah, it's coming up to the surface.
And then what's interesting, though, is what is this? Is this a little dock or something, or a wharf with all the ads on it, new home ads, and what is this back here?
Oh, yeah. That's probably what the East River looked like.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's
and
so
you
cool.
can
I'll show the audience in the camera here.
There you go.
Cindy, if you can go to 1, please. So these are the geysers.
Yep.
That you were talking about.
250 feet in the air.
That's crazy. And then here are the people
and you can see
going out.
Yeah, you can see the tower of his headquarters and rigging. He designed special equipment to do this drilling. If you go to the East River today, there's a little place called Mill Island. And it's still out there. Across from the mayor's home at Gracie Mansion, you can see Mill Island. That's where they dredged up all the rock and put it all together.
Where, what year was this?
The first explosion is September of 1876, and this explosion takes place in October of 1885.
Wow.
And so...
That's pretty cool.
And so, for people in New York City, they know if you make the New York Times, you're either famous or infamous. And John Newton will actually make the cover of the New York Times 3 days in a row.
Nice, good for him.
For this, he will be promoted to Chief Engineer of the Army, Brigadier General of regular Army forces. He has reached the pinnacle of U.S. Army engineers.
Huh.
In 1886, he requests retirement, and he will...
retire as a brigadier.
He will retire as a brigadier, brevet Major General of Volunteers.
Wow. When does he die?
And so, Newton's first going to come here to Gettysburg.
Oh, good for him.
You ever seen that picture?
I don't know. Let me look.
That is I
don't think I have.
I think that's an 1890 photograph of all the surviving Corps commanders here at Gettysburg. Wow. With the Comte de Paris.
So there he is sitting right next to
Abner Doubleday.
Abner Doubleday.
Why is he sitting next to Doubleday? I thought Doubleday didn't like him. Okay, so here's the story.
Okay.
On July 6, 1863, Abner Doubleday realizes or finds out that John Newton is actually his senior. Actually his junior. Mm-hmm. And Newton says, I told Meade, but he said he had authority to do so. And so Doubleday rides off to Meade and says, I'm not going to take orders from a junior officer. Okay? I'm not going to take orders from a junior officer. Now, what's Meade doing on July 6th? He's planning the pursuit of Lee. And so Meade snaps back and says, I don't have time for this. Go back to your command. You can either go back to your command or you can leave the Army. And Doubleday leaves the Army. He rides down to Washington to complain. And when he gets to Washington, he finds out that Meade did, in fact, have the authority to put a junior over a senior. And so Doubleday is like, oh, crap. It's too late for me to go back, and so that's what ends up happening to Doubleday. Doubleday spends pretty much the rest of his life blaming Meade, but later on in his life, he finds out it was actually Howard. It was Howard's report who did him in. Oh, by the way, there's another little fun story. I'm sorry, this is turning into a too long podcast. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
And so. There's actually a story that Doubleday who was actually wounded here at Gettysburg. He's blown off his horse and struck in the throat by a piece of shrapnel.
Yeah.
Luckily for him, he had his felt collar folded down, and when it hit him, it launched him off the horse, but it didn't go through the felt collar.
Lucky.
And it's Newton who actually picks him up off the ground.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Doubleday said Newton was over me laughing, saying, "You're the luckiest man on the field, Abner." And Doubleday goes on vacation to recuperate after the battle when his wife meets Mary Todd Lincoln. Oh. And they hit it off as good friends. And then orders come through for Abner Doubleday to be reassigned down to the Department of the Gulf. And Mary Todd Lincoln goes, "Oh, does that mean you're not going to be in Washington where we can hang out and be good friends?" And Mrs. Doubleday says, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And Mary goes, "Let me make a phone call." And she gets Doubleday's orders revoked.
Oh, no.
And that's why Doubleday, for the rest of the war, stays in Washington doing administrative and live. And this sketch is going to help Kelly make the famous Council of War sketch.
Okay.
And if you look at that sketch, you can see Newton is in the back, sitting on the bed, talking to Gouverneur Warren.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Okay.
Looks like Warren's sitting on his lap.
Yeah, well, don't ask, don't tell.
Clearly.
Okay. And so that makes perfect sense to me because Newton's an engineer. Warren's an engineer. Newton sees Warren with a wound to his neck. Hey, hey, Warren, what happened to you? And so Warren tells him about the fighting over at Little Round Top. Well, what's a Little Round Top? Newton doesn't know that. He's over on Cemetery Hill. And as Warren is coming down off the adrenaline of the day, Warren will fall asleep, but he's already transferred the knowledge to Newton. And Newton now starts looking at the map, and now he starts to worry about Little Round Top. And now look at the minutes of the Council of War. What does John Gibbons say? We got to stay, but we have to reposition and watch the flank. Newton says the exact same thing. Later on in life, Gibbon was asked, "Why did you answer the question that way?" And he says, "I just had a conversation with John Newton, and it was still on my mind."
Huh.
And then what does Hancock say? Yes, stay. Yes, reposition, but do not do anything that looks like a retreat. And so there's a lot of your guests in that photograph. A couple of years ago, I was actually asked to recreate that sketch, and there I am as John Newton, Dr. Jen Murray.
Is that Jen Murray there?
And Chris Gwynn, and Scott Hardwick, and Chris Army, Mike Walker, and
Jim Hessler.
Jim Hessler.
So,
how could I forget Sickles?
You can
fit
these people,
everybody in that. You can fit everybody in that room.
That's something.
We were not allowed to reposition the furniture, and so you can see that John Heiser is sitting in the middle of the bed frame.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, you can fit everybody in that room.
Wow.
Yep.
Look at that. And you're all positioned. Now, who was sitting on whose lap to be Newton and Warren?
Well, I was Newton, and
so
Roger.
Whose lap were you sitting on?
Roger Hella.
I don't know him.
Oh, you should know Roger.
Do I? I don't know him.
I'm sure you know him from
I don't know anybody named Roger.
Table.
No, I've only been there once to see Jim talk about Custer.
Well, okay.
Yeah. I don't have time for, I wish I had time for round tables. I barely have time for dinner.
Oh, you got to meet Roger, and his beautiful wife does all the artistry and stuff like that. And so,
I'd love to.
We'll get you linked up. Okay, so the sketch was done in January of 1895. Newton dies on May 1st, 1895. And is he going to be buried with his family in Virginia? No, he is buried at West Point. Okay, West Point, the United States Military Academy that President Jefferson authorized not only to be a military academy, but it was also be a school of engineering.
Right.
Because Jefferson wanted
trains.
Yeah, Jefferson wanted to have American engineers rival the masters in Europe. And so we can say that Newton may not have been the best tactician military officer, but I think we can clearly say that Newton was one of the finest military and civil engineers of his time.
Sure.
And oh, by the way, that explosion
Yeah.
It was the number one planned non-nuclear largest explosion ever created up to that point.
Right.
And it only drops out of the top 10 largest explosions when testing begins on the atomic bomb.
Really?
Yep. So
wow.
That is the life of Major General John.
Well, that is a fascinating life. I never really knew about John Newton. I never really cared to know. And now I'm glad that you chose this, or Dave chose this topic.
No, I chose.
You chose. I'm glad we had you come on to do this, because this is why I love doing the show, because I just,
it will all be on the guide exam.
You hear that, people? All right, let's do this. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk to our patrons over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg who have sent in questions for Paul. And you can do that too if you go become a patron, patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. We'll be right back after these words. Hey, did you know, girls, Colby, everybody, that there are almost 300 audio shows and almost 100 video shows on our Patreon page?
That's pretty awesome.
Did you know that several respectable licensed battlefield guides are patrons?
Wow.
But they've asked to remain nameless so as to not ruin their reputation.
That's not true.
Are they embarrassed by you?
Yes, that's the point.
They're not. That's not true.
It's true. Just ask Ralph or Rob or
Charlie,
Jason. Patreon now allows, or Lewis. I won't say their last names. Patreon now allows you, ladies and gentlemen, to have a 7-day free trial. Now, I could choose whatever level I wanted. I could have chosen the level where you get the least amount of perks, but I said no. I'm going to give them the best value level, which would be the second lieutenant, because you get all of the audio shows for the month. So you get that for 7 days, 7-day free trial. Might go away for a while. I'll bring it back and I'll go away, bring it back. But right now it's there. If you're not sure that you want to join. And it also allows you to purchase individual episodes. This is a new thing that they've allowed. Now I got to go through all the episodes and put them on there. Yeah, and open it up. It's cheaper if you become a monthly member. You can also have annual subscriptions. There's a discount if you do that. And did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that 908 out of 909 college sophomores agree that you can't say you're fully prepared for the guide exam without having consumed all of Addressing Gettysburg's Patreon content. How do you do that? Become a second lieutenant. Guys, these are college sophomores. Okay? They know everything. They know everything. Just watch the news, watch TikTok. They will tell you. That's it. That's it. Go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg to become a patron. I was going to say a licensed battlefield guide. That's not what you become if you do that. Become a patron. Addressing Gettysburg. Patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg. Do it. Just do it and make Bethany happy, okay? Do it. Do it.
Out of bed, the hair's mussed up on your head. You picture the 20th Maine, and you're happy once again.
Fight the battle against being slow with little ground top bro. Hey now, I want to tell you something. A beep a scoodle doodle dop dee, scoodly dee, skitty bee, cutie. All right, so.
I liked that transition.
Thank you. Little Ground Top, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, you know what? Go to Little Ground Top. Are you on it there, Colby? Because we've got some pictures that listeners have been.
Look up. Well, I'm on it, man.
I can't. I get it off the board. I don't get the output.
I'm on it. You're good.
Beautiful. Last night, in fact, our friend Ricky Fowler sent a picture of his wife holding two bags of Little Ground Top. And he said it was part of a coffee-themed gift that he gave her. So
What a
thank
great
you.
idea.
What a great idea, indeed. And hey, Christmas is coming up, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure is.
You know what you could do, and Thanksgiving is too. So you want to have an enjoyable cup of coffee with dessert after your Thanksgiving meal. Better start ordering soon. I was told the other day at Bantam Roasters, tell everybody if they're going to order for the holidays to get the order in ahead of time, well ahead of time, because they are already getting slammed with little ground top orders. And thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for that, by the way. The combination of cacao, wildflowers, and toasted sugar creates a nuanced cup of coffee that is both intriguing and satisfying. It's a great choice for those who appreciate a complex profile with a touch of sweetness and floral elegance. Whether you're a seasoned coffee drinker like Colby or just looking to elevate your morning routine like Bethany, this blend is sure to impress like Cindy. So whether you're near or far, let Bantam Roasters bring a taste of Gettysburg to you, and cacao. Gettysburg plus cacao. Thank you, Matt, for... Oh, yeah, that's it. So go to Bantam Roasters at 82 Steinware Avenue. The next time you're in town, it's straight across the street from the Dobbin House, which, of course, you will be probably eating at and having a Rum Belly's Vengeance. And then you can also, if you can't get there, you'll go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe because... you're so curious. You want to try it. And you're going to do that. addressinggettysburg.com/cafe.
Our favorite bookstore in Gettysburg is For the Historian, located at 42 York Street. It's because they have the best selection of Civil War books in Gettysburg, both new and used. And online, they have even more to choose from. And if the Civil War isn't your thing, that's not a problem. This is For the Historian, after all. They cover history from the ancient world to the 21st century with a strong selection of World War II and American Revolution books. It's astounding how many thousands of titles from Osprey, Savas Beatty, UNC Press, and more they have in their store. And that's because, well, they have a warehouse too. And that's where they keep all the books that are available online at forthehistorian.com. And folks, if you go to forthehistorian.com now and order books until you're blue in the face, be sure you mention that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg in the Note to Seller box, and they will refund your shipping costs. And if you prefer to stop by when you're in town, well, you could do that too. Just mention Addressing Gettysburg at checkout, and they'll take 20% off the retail price of your item. So go to forthehistorian.com or stop by 42 York Street, or you can call them at 717-685-5207. That's forthehistorian.com or 717-685-5207.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
All right, we are back now with Paul Bailey, licensed battlefield guide extraordinaire, and we are talking about John Newton. We have questions from our patrons over at patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg. Any level will get you the ability to submit a question, but only the smart ones are, I don't know, whatever. You're all smart for joining. I was trying to be funny there, and it just didn't work, so... So here we go. All right. So our first one is Stephen Lunsford. Have you seen Stephen Lunsford's books on the order of battle? They're brand new. I have them out in the bookshelf. I'll show you on the way out today. I have
to take a look at them.
They're fantastic. Very handy. Each volume, it's, 7 or 8 volumes. Each volume is a different corps. So far, he has the Army of the Potomac done. And one of the volumes is headquarters. You never really see much about headquarters.
Yeah.
And so he has all that in there. It's very good.
It can be very confusing, especially in the 6th Corps.
Yes.
With Wheaton replacing
Will Wheaton.
Wheaton.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes. Right. Yep. A lot of tons.
Yes.
All right. Stephen says, why did Meade select John Newton in particular for command of the 1st Corps after Reynolds' death? Was he the most senior division commander, trusted friend of Meade, or a trusted friend of Meade? Did he have any prior connection to the 1st Corps? Seems like he knew all the answers to that question in the question.
Isn't that amazing?
But go ahead, elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think as an engineer, they had a professional understanding, awareness of each other prior to the war.
Sure.
During the battle, obviously they were both under Franklin's Grand Division because Meade was in the First Corps and Newton was in the Second Corps, so they're operating in the same sphere of influence on the battlefield. And so, yeah, I think he may. I haven't found it yet. Unfortunately, that's what happens with Sedgwick dying in '64. There's no real account. One of the other issues is that I've been finding hard to do the research on John Newton is, first, if you Google John Newton, you will get the Reverend John Newton who writes the song Amazing Grace. Okay, and then you got to get through Fig Newton and Isaac Newton.
Two very famous Newtons.
And oh, by the way, we mentioned earlier Catholic schools. Newton was Catholic.
So that might be another reason why.
Yes, I have found that he received honorary degrees from Notre Dame University, Notre Dame. And so I have a feeling that there may have been his personal papers may have been destroyed.
Oh, that's
because
a shame.
all of his kids, unfortunately, do not have children, and so there is no Newton line that extends.
How many kids did he have?
He has 5,
And none of them had a kid
and none of them had a kid.
that survived or had a kid at all.
Had a kid at all.
Amazing.
It's
odd for that
His son John does actually serve in the U.S. Navy as an engineer during World War I. He is testing all electronic devices, and he owns a house near Pinehurst, near the golf course. And his Mary Newton is the sole survivor, and she dies in her brother's house. I've actually been down to North Carolina looking through the wills and estate records of Mary Newton. I'm like, where are the papers? So if anybody knows where John Newton's personal papers are.
Oh, man, that would be an awesome find.
Yeah.
Joseph Jacobs says, what would you say was Newton's biggest contribution to the Battle of Gettysburg?
Yeah, I really think the Council of War is it, and it's something that I actually said to the officers on the staff ride yesterday. You know, we hear about Lee at the end of Pickett's charge saying it's all my fault. You know, it's all my fault. That's what good leaders do. Good leaders take the blame and they pass on, the kudos to the subordinates. And so you don't hear Newton say, I ordered the Vermonters to do the flank attack, because that would take away from the Vermonters. It would also take away from Doubleday because they were part of Doubleday's division. And so you don't hear Newton writing accounts, even though he lives until 1895, saying, I did this, I did this, I did. He's not a self-promoter. And so when I hear people say, he's Meade's mouthpiece, I'm like, no, he's really an engineer looking for how is this attack going to fail. I think that's what engineers do. They really like to, and so at the Council of War, he expresses himself and says, I'm concerned about this, concerned about this, concerned about this. And so I really think he gets John Gibbons' buy-in, and Hancock will agree with him. Ultimately, it's Meade's decision anyway. But everybody along the line, before you get to Slocum saying stay and fight it out, there's a discussion that happens there, and I think Newton is part of it, and that's why I try to link him in with Warren, even though Warren's asleep in the background. Yeah.
Robert McGee says, seems to me that Newton did not come under the same scrutiny and mistrust for being a Virginian that others, George Thomas, David Farragut, were subject to. Is that in fact the case? And if so, was that due to his lesser prominence in the command structure? And then he has a second question. How much did Newton's trip to visit Lincoln along with Cochrane affect his position in the Army of the Potomac? I know Congress didn't approve his promotion to Major General, but it also hurt him. But did it also hurt him in the eyes of his peers? So there's...
Yeah, as far as the Virginian piece of it, I think that when I started off talking about the Newton family history in Virginia, I think I really had to lay that foundation work, because if you know anything about the Newton family and you know that one brother is Confederate, one brother is a Union with Cincinnati and Washington. And so I think people were giving him kind of the benefit of the doubt because this is a divided family. Washington Irving Newton is part of the Dragoons, he becomes very close with Thomas. He actually is one of the pallbearers at Thomas's funeral. And so, I've actually found one Virginia genealogy book that says John Newton, Thomas Newton's son, served on the wrong side during the Civil War. So he was going to get it north and south. So
Jesus, they have a hard time letting that go.
I think he's okay. And the second question.
The second question was his visit to Lincoln. Do you think that might have hurt him with Congress, but did it also hurt him with his peers?
I think it definitely hurts him with the War Department because if Newton did such a good job at Peachtree Creek, Sherman captures Atlanta. Hey, buddy, we're getting ready to march onto the sea. Why does Newton miss out on that? Why does he go to the Department of Key West and Tortugas? I know the answer. It's because the commander of the Dry Tortugas drops dead. He has a heart attack, drops dead. The position has to be filled. But, being sent to Key West, nowadays I'm like, hey, send me to Key West. But, if you're a military officer or a combat veteran, do you really want to go down to Key West? You're chasing what? Blockade runners,
right. Pirates.
Pirates.
It's not like it is today.
Right. I've actually found a correspondence alerting Newton that he should be on the lookout and stop every ship going by to make sure that Jefferson Davis doesn't escape.
Interesting.
And so, that's... there's this old military thing of don't screw this up or you're going to be assigned to the Arctic Circle.
Right. Yeah. And you think back then, we think today we're like, oh, it'd be so nice to go to the Keys, but like they didn't have air conditioning then. They're wearing wool or whatever. Like it was miserable.
Right.
It was miserable.
Yeah. We know that Burnside doesn't send him any Christmas cards.
Here's one from Down Under, our friend Grant from Australia. He says, why did Meade replace Doubleday with Newton? Historians seem to believe nowadays that Doubleday did the best he could on July 1st. So we mentioned before, this is Howard that is kind of, giving Meade this idea. What exactly does Howard say?
Howard says that the First Corps acted badly.
Right. So he doesn't say Doubleday, but I guess the implication is, well, he's the commander, so...
Correct.
Yeah. And so that's going to make Meade a little shaky about Doubleday, and so he's going to switch him over there.
Yeah, and I think part of it is maybe deflecting a little blame.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Now this is pretty good. Now I got to tell you, Grant is a loyal listener, and he comments a lot. We do our weekly show on YouTube, AG Today, and he often calls in and busts my balls about whatever. And he's very funny. And but I got to tell you something. The guy knows his Civil War history, and not just the war. He knows things about the people after the war, and he's not just sticking to that. And here's an example. His second question: is it true that Newton took some nitroglycerin from Hell's Gate Rocks explosion in 1884 for a 4th of July fireworks display?
That's a great find. Wow.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That is a great find. Nitroglycerin. I know that. I know that Newton's explosions underwater are part of engineering and chemistry books nowadays as far as the effects of the explosion happening under rock as well as underwater. And it almost, I'm going to pick a wild number here, like it quadrupled the effect of the explosion.
Oh, I bet.
And so I'm not a chemist. I don't make meth in my trailer or anything like that.
And you said it was a 9-acre rock.
Yes.
That's what's so hard, because when we see rocks, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg basically for a lot of rocks, right?
Yep.
They're not just sitting, all of them are not just sitting on top of the ground.
Yep.
So like 9 acres.
9 acres.
Under the river of rock. And how deep, do we know?
What is the East River? I don't know.
Well, no, I don't mean how deep down. I mean, how, so 9 acres, I'm guessing, wide this rock is, and how many acres down? Or
well, the engineer report I just said, it said 9 acres worth of material.
Okay, so that could be the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. Either way, that's fascinating to me.
So a couple of things there. We know that nitroglycerin is used in the, making the railroad and the
right.
So one of the things about nitroglycerin is it's unstable, and there was a lot of testing. So there's your rock if you want to show that to the peoples. There we go. Let's see. I mean, how much excavation they have to do. So the one on the left is Hallett's Point, and the one on the right is Flood Rock.
Just trying to get a sense of what the hell I'm looking at here.
Yeah, those are all the caverns that were hollowed out.
Holy gee. Oh, really?
So the outline is the rock.
Okay, so this is the rock. So this is the surface?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then this is looking down at the top of the rock. Is that right?
That is the first rock he blows up at Hallett's Point. And so you can see Astoria, Queens, where, Fort Stevens?
Yeah.
And so that's where he tunnels down from the land underneath the river.
It's amazing how they figured this shit out back then.
And so on the top you can see the cofferdam, and so there's the entranceway down under the water and tunneling underneath the rock, Fort Stevens and Astoria, Queens. I think there's a baseball field there now. And they hollow it out. And so you can see everything's hollowed out. The columns of the stones stay as pillars to support the top of the rock so it doesn't collapse in on you and the water collapses in on you.
Right, that would suck.
And after that success, then they moved to Flood Rock, and you can see how much from the Manhattan side, and the Queens side, they tunnel out and all the different caverns. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so if if you think of like a current salt mine or a coal miner, I mean that's kind of what it would look like looking down into it. One of the things. So let me very quickly about explosives. Okay, when I was in the Army, we used C4 explosives.
Sure.
Okay, I'm not an engineer. Don't pretend to be one. But every once in a while, especially when we got to work with the engineers would show us the material and make sure that we knew how to handle it properly. Because a lot of people get really freaky around, I don't want to touch it. And it's pretty stable. Okay.
C4.
Well, yeah. C4 is very stable. In fact, you can cut a piece of C4 off and light it on fire, and it's a fuel, and that's okay. Now, you don't want to step on it, bang on it while it's on fire, because to create an explosion, you need the fuel, the spark, and pressure. Okay. And so,
interesting.
When a bomb goes off, it explodes outwards. Okay. We just mentioned Oppenheimer real quick.
Yeah.
And so it's the outside explosions were pushing the atom in, exploding in that pressure. If nitroglycerin, I never played with it before. Could he have used it for fireworks? He probably could have put it on fire. Okay. I mean, would he launch it up into the air and make an explosion? Yeah. I'd like to find that one.
Yeah, like what would he have done with it? But it's in TNT, isn't it? Nitroglycerin, right? Yeah.
It probably would have caused a flame. I don't know. It wouldn't have sparkled.
Maybe
would
just for the booms.
Would it go off like a M80? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But he did it for the boom.
But it's a great question, Grant. And if you know the source, send it to me. I'll include
Grant.
it in the book. And one thing about Grant's comment there, which goes back to my comment earlier about the guide exam. The thing I would pass along to anybody who's interested in becoming a guide is do not just read about Gettysburg. Because as I talked about today, you have to know all these people. You don't have to know, but it helps to know why these people made this decision. when Jim Hessler talks about Hazel Grove and Sickles and the peach orchard and stuff like that.
Right.
It's good. It's good to know what happens to him before and after, because people will ask, what happens to this person afterwards? I grew up in Astoria, Queens. Never heard about Newton. Never heard about Newton. In fact, I went to the Astoria, Queens Historical Society, and I said, can I see your stuff on Newton? And they said, who? And I said, the guy who does this. And they were like, no, that was done by this person. I said, oh, really? Here's the report. And they went, oh, crap. We've been using the wrong guy's name.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, and they showed me the photographs of the Coffer Dam and the explosion. So.
All right, and finally, Ethan Gallo says, could Newton's Tallahassee campaign, which culminated in the Battle of Natural Bridge, be explained in full? Jesus. And Ethan, sorry.
So we have this.
Jesus.
We have the 2nd U.S. colored troops and the 99th U.S. colored troops, and that I'm going to leave it there.
How many overall are we're dealing with? How many soldiers on either side?
Newton said with the naval support who were guarding some of the bridges, he had about 1,000.
About 1,000.
1,000. And,
so, okay. And against what?
And then the Confederate reports say it's less than, they had about 500. But, this goes back to history and making. So if you make a smaller force defeating a larger force, it kind of boosts morale even bigger.
Yeah.
But the Navy says no. There were clearly anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 Confederates or armed people nearby. Newton later said that he wasn't planning on going all the way to Tallahassee. Also, remember...
Very few are.
Yeah. One of the interesting parts of the Battle of Natural Bridge is, you know how we talk about the VMI cadets being involved in Newmarket, Florida State University. It's not what it was called back then, but some of the students were involved in the Battle of Natural Bridge. And also, I mentioned earlier, Fort Pickens. There was a Union force at Fort Pickens. What was the guy's name? General Steele, Frederick Steele. And if Newton and Steele could have cooperated, coming from Pensacola and Newton coming up the river, maybe something would have happened. But Steele actually goes west in an effort to help out with the capture of, I think it's Mobile and other places. So, Florida is a great place. There are some Civil War battlefields down there, and some nice places. And oh, by the way, Tallahassee is the only Confederate state capital east of the Mississippi doesn't surrender during the war. In fact, they receive a telegram telling them of the surrender, and the commander of the forces in Tallahassee passes that telegram on to Newton saying, hey, will you honor this? And so that's how Newton knows the war's over.
Interesting. Paul, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun, and you're welcome back anytime. All you need to do is just, let Dave know you have an idea for a show, and he'll set it up. So
I appreciate it.
You don't need to go through a whole big rigmarole.
We'll wait for the feedback from the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they'll like this. It seems this year, every time we do a biographical or a unit-specific episode, people are really enjoying it, so we're doing more of them we're going to record more of them in 24, and they'll come out between 24 and 25. So
very good.
That's it. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, don't forget, if you want to ask questions on Ask Guide, you can go to patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg, become a patron, and you'll know when it's going to happen and all this other jazz. Also, don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. That's all we've got for now. We have a TikTok, but TikTok creeps me out, and I'd never really use it, so I'll probably delete it eventually, or I don't know. But yeah, anyway, you guys have yourselves a great one. We'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory.
If you think history should be shared and not shied away from, and you want to help combat YouTube's shadow banning of history channels, then please like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget, click that notification bell when you do.